people with long hair and beards smoking marijuana. I was one of those, actually a hippie, you might say. But that didn't last for long because I became very disillusioned with that. I felt there was something missing from my life. I had quite a few friends also that became, one or two of them became disillusioned with it, and I met one of them one day when I was thinking about this, and he gave me a small book called, I can't remember the title, but it was a very small book on yoga, mainly to do with Hatha yoga postures. And I didn't know anything at all about yoga then, at that time. And he said, why don't you take this book? He said, it might change your life. Apparently it changed his life. He became a Buddhist, I think. But so I took this book home and started practicing. And I realized I couldn't do the postures because I needed a teacher. I couldn't do them just by looking at a book. And so I had this intense desire to want to learn this practice of yoga. And I think it was just my sincere desire that attracted the means of getting to that, which was a book called The Guide to Alternative London. It may have been stocked at Watkins at that time, I don't know. But in that book there was a page, I live in South London, there was a book, in that part of London there was a teacher called Swami Pragyamurti. Actually her name was Laya Garadi at the time. And I went along to her and started practicing with her, her class on yoga postures. So it was more to do with Hatha yoga. She was a disciple of Swami Satyananda Saraswati, the Bihar school of yoga. And I didn't realize I'd be practicing with that school for about 10 years. So I was following those practices and teachings for about 10 years. But during that time, I still felt as if I hadn't found the right path. It wasn't really my path, or I hadn't found the right guru. I was searching for a guru to find truth and the meaning of life and so on. And at that time, I started looking around at other different teachings and gurus. So I went through the whole process of yoga, of Kundalini yoga, Hatha yoga, Raja yoga, Jnana yoga, all these different kinds of yogas, and I met many inspiring teachers and gurus who come from India. In the 1970s, actually, there was a great time for seeing these inspiring teachers. There was 4 direct disciples of Swami Shivananda of Rishikesh who came to London during that time. They were giving retreats and seminars, workshops, and I remember one time that there was a teacher called Swami Venkateshananda. He was one of the direct disciples, and he had held a retreat in Sussex in the countryside. And in the traditional Indian way, he had the satsang, a gathering of sharing in fellowship, with others, sitting beneath a tree. So everybody was sitting cross-legged outside beneath the tree, and we were sitting there listening to him. He was talking about, meditation and yoga and so on. And a car drew up just outside along the road, a country road, and everything seemed to stop. He seemed to know who this person was. So we was all looking over to the road. There's a red Mercedes car there, and I looked over and I saw on the one thing that really caught my eye was the number plate. It said Om, the mantra Om, with number 1, Om 1. And then I saw the door open. I thought, well, who is this important person coming out? And it happened to be Peter Sellers, the famous film star. I was just amazed. And then Britt Eklund came out, the girl on his arm. She stepped out as well. And so this Swami Venkatesh, who is a guru from India, took them aside and had a private conversation with them for a while. So we were all sitting there waiting for him to come back. And then he came back and he just said, oh, well, I had a meeting with Peter Sellers. He wanted to have a satsang with me. So I think at that time Peter Sellers was having going through some different life problems, and he was starting to seek. He probably had something missing in his own life and wanted to seek truth. So that was one of the great disciples, and the other one was Swami Satchidananda, who had a long beard, who was living in America. There was Swami Satchidananda Saraswati, and all these great teachers who came to London have passed away now. They're not gone, they've gone into Mahasamadhi. So then a bit later, in 1981, I met J. Krishnamurti, the famous one who was groomed to be the Messiah by Annie Besant and the other theosophists. That was amazing because I went to Brockwood Park in Hampshire. He was giving a talk there, and he happened to be walking around. There was a big marquee, a tent outside, a canvas tent, and it was filled with chairs. All the chairs were empty, but inside, I was just waiting for him to start the talk, and he came in just by himself. So I actually met him personally, and he was just standing right next to me, and we started talking. And the one thing I really noticed was his eyes. There's just so much compassion and love in his eyes, which was, I thought, because I always imagined him to be very intellectual, but I think he had the love in the heart as well. So that was very inspiring for me. And then the following year was when it all happened for me, when I came onto the path of Kriya Yoga, because in 1982 I went to the Mind Body Spirit Festival at Olympia, and there was a Swami Kriyananda, who was a direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda, who wrote the Autobiography of a Yogi, the famous classic book, which I had read during the 1970s, about 10 years before, but I didn't really know, I didn't know anybody associated with it, so I think also I wasn't ready. I had to go through a lot of purification of the mind and the body, which I did through the Hatha Yoga I was practicing at that time. And then, so I went along realizing that he was a direct disciple, and he gave a 2-hour workshop in the afternoon on Kriya Yoga and the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. He also talked about Ananda, because he started the Ananda organization in America, which was like a spiritual community. And I was totally inspired by this. I went home that night, and then it was on my mind all evening. I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning and realized I'd had this dream, which I was told later was a superconscious dream, where Paramahansa Yogananda actually appeared to me in the dream. He was standing facing me just a few feet away with the long hair, the orange robe, and he said to me, I've got the exact words, he said, "Fear not, for I am Paramahansa Yogananda, your true guru. This is your spiritual path. Come, follow me." And also Swami Kriyananda appeared in the dream too. It was almost, I knew then it was to affirm that he was to be my guru, and that I should be following this path of Kriya Yoga. So I was totally overjoyed, because I'd been searching for 10 years before, going through all these other teachings and gurus and teachers, and didn't really feel any complete fulfillment. And so from that day on, I've been following for 30 years now the teachings of Yogananda and practicing Kriya Yoga, meditation, and this is also mentioned in this book which we're promoting, the Yoga Meditation book, which is about the subject of Kriya Yoga. It has the techniques in the book, the preparation techniques, which can prepare you for the Kriya initiation of Kriya Yoga that Yogananda taught. I don't know if any of you have read the autobiography of a yogi, but that is in that book there's a chapter on Kriya Yoga technique. But he doesn't actually give the technique away, because it's a secret technique and one should be initiated into it. But in my book, I've given the preparation techniques because they are ancient techniques that were already in the Hatha Yoga and Tantric teachings, which you can find in Hatha Yoga books. These teachings, they're quite powerful techniques. They can help you to raise the energy in the spine and bring you to that inner stillness through deep meditation. So, what is yoga? We can come to now. I think in this day and age, I think a lot of people are associating yoga with just yoga postures. You know, we see now it's become very popular. Many people are doing yoga classes all over the country, all over Europe, in America. But I think it's not the same as when I was inspired by Hatha Yoga. During the 1970s, there was a much more spiritual approach, an integral approach actually. It's more integrated with the meditation, learning the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, the spiritual classics, Upanishads and so on, and meditation and devotion for God. All those elements seem to be divorced from it now. All we have now is like just the practice of doing yoga postures, which seems to become like a fashion. I'm not putting it down because I do practice Hatha Yoga myself, so I still practice it. I practice Ashtanga, Vinyasa Yoga postures, which helps to keep the body healthy and fit, and gives the energy to the body, which we need, that energy to bring into the meditation. So but yoga, the true meaning of yoga really is to unite the individual self with which in the Sanskrit is the Atman, with the Paramatman, which is the supreme self, or God, whichever word you want to use, the ultimate reality. And Kriya Yoga is, Kriya means right or action, and Yoga means union or unity, to join. So you're joining the inner self with trying to unite that again with what we call God, the Supreme Self. And the way to do that is through meditation. Kriya meditation is a very powerful technique to do that, which requires regular practice every day. The purpose of Kriya Yoga is to, if we go back to how the soul comes into the body, actually, Yogananda said that the soul consciousness enters the body through the medulla oblongata at the base of the brain, and it goes down through the chakras, the energy, the centers of consciousness in the spine, the astral spine, and then it settles in the lower. As it comes down, it becomes grosser and grosser as it settles into the lower chakras, the lower three chakras. So yoga is the complete reversal of that, is to reverse the process so that the energy is starting to come up again until you bring it up into the higher chakras, so this higher awareness, higher consciousness. And to do that, Kriya meditation helps you to do that. We can do a technique now, or I can show you. So It's called the Hong Saw technique. This was one of Yogananda's preparation techniques. So if you just close your eyes for a few moments, sit upright with the spine. The body should be relaxed, and the body should be upright, and the spine upright, the head and neck in line. And just place the hands loosely in the lap. Have the palms upwards if you can. And then just bring your attention to the point between the eyebrows, midpoint between the eyebrows on the forehead. At this Yogananda called it the spiritual eye. The Agya is the Agya chakra, or the third eye, as some people call it. And just become aware of your natural breathing. Feel the breath. In the beginning, you just feel the movement of the rib cage and the abdomen breathing, moving. But don't try to change this in any way. Let the breathing breathe itself, be natural. And then bring your awareness a little to the nostril openings, where the breath is entering the nostrils at that point, and become aware of the sensation of the breath on the nasal membranes just inside the nostrils. As you inhale, you'll feel a cool sensation, and as you exhale, you'll feel a warm sensation on those nasal membranes. All you need to do is just to observe and be aware of the breath and the sensation of the breath coming in and going out. Don't try to control or change it in any way. It's a natural process of just witnessing or observing the breath. Now, move your attention a little higher up to the bridge of the nose, where the nose meets the forehead, and become aware as if you're breathing, inhaling and exhaling at that point. You may feel a sensation there at the bridge of the nose where the breath is coming and going. Now, and finally, bring the breath up a little higher to the point, midpoint on the forehead, between the eyebrows. I call it Yogananda call it the spiritual eye. The eye is the chakra of spiritual perception and intuition. Now, as the breath flows in naturally of its own accord at that point, and flows out naturally at that point, we're going to add a mantra to it called a Bij mantra, seed syllable mantra, which is Hong Saw. Yogananda called this the Hong Saw technique, and we use this mantra, Hong Saw, which means I am He. He spelled with a capital H, meaning the spirit or the self within you, your blissful essence within. So as you breathe in, mentally repeat Hong. As you breathe out, mentally repeat Saw. So it's Hong Saw, Hong Saw. Just keep your attention, concentration, focused on the breath and the mantra simultaneously. This mantra Hong Saw is the same as Soham, Nahamsa. Yogananda used the mantra Hong as you inhaled, and Saw as you breathe out. I am He, I am the spirit within. So you're affirming your true nature, your true essence within. And the more you do this, the more you will remember the divine within you, the God within you. Remember in the Bible, in the Psalms, it says, the kingdom of God is within. And this is which is always present, ever present. It's always within you, always now, always here. All you need to do is to tune into it, attune yourself to that, and try to remain aware and be with that all the time. To try to remain in that presence of the divine within you. Then you're not separated. Then you have the unity of Yogi Patanjali. Clearly states in his Yoga Sutras, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga, which means yoga is neutralizing or stilling the vortices of feeling and thinking that revolve around the ego. And then in the next verse he says, Tara drastu sarup vartanam. Then the seer, or the self within, abides in its own true nature, the self. So just in those two, and then in the last verse, vritti sarupyam itaratra, he says at other times the indwelling self is identified with the changing states or modifications of the mind. In those three verses, it sums up the whole of what yoga is actually. Mind is the obstacle to meditation and to finding God or finding yourself within. If you can remove that obstacle, then it's just like the sky. The sun is always there in the sky, but sometimes it clouds over and the light is gone. We know the light is still there, but to us it seems to have disappeared. And when you're in the state of ignorance, avidya, as it's called in Sanskrit, then you lose that awareness and remembrance of your true nature. It's clouded, just like the sun is clouded when the sky becomes overcast and cloudy. So meditation can help to remove those obstacles, or yoga in general. If you're practicing the Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga, for example, which is what my book is about as well. It has the 8 limbs of yoga, the 8 steps, which is, first of all, you need a solid foundation following the moral precepts of and ethical codes, because without that, it's like a building. If it hasn't got a stable foundation, it becomes very shaky and can fall down. So one has to be kind of mentally pure through following these codes of it, following the truth, and being non-violent, for example. And then the next step is asan. But Patanjali says that asan, he only gives one asan. Asan means posture. And this posture is just being able to sit still for meditation. It's not doing lots of yoga postures, which has become very popular today. It's just doing the one posture, really, of sitting. And then after that, pranayama is the next step, which is the control of the life force, the breathing through yogic breathing. And then that leads on to the next limb, which is pratyahara. So that's withdrawing the mind from the senses. Usually, in everyday life, our senses are always going outward. We're listening to things, we're looking at things, we're smelling things, we're hearing things, we're touching things. All those things can draw your mind outwards and distract you from knowing who you are, knowing your true essence, that you're a divine being expressing yourself through the physical body, through the mind, through the senses. But you are not that mind, you're not that body, you're not those senses. You're a spiritual being, the self within, or the spirit within. The next step from pratyahara leads on to dharana, which is a concentration. So before you can meditate, you must be able to, you need to be able to concentrate the mind, just like focusing the rays of the sun through a magnifying glass, to burn a piece of paper. Your mind has to be totally one-pointed and focused, and then you can enter the state of meditation. It's not an easy path for everybody, because meditation and Kriya Yoga, for example, requires first of all self-discipline, loyalty, devotion, and a persistent effort. Actually, Yogananda said a strong, persistent effort to succeed. If you want to succeed on the yoga path, it's not for the half-hearted approach. One must be really one-pointed and devoted to it. And then you start to see success in your own meditation, which needs to be practiced daily, on a daily basis, so that you can go deeper in, and then maybe sometimes to go into a longer meditation. So the longer meditations are more productive, because then you can really take the time to slow the mind down and go into a quiet and still state. And then in that still state, you realize, who you are and what life is, the meaning of life, who God is, and your relationship to the cosmic God. For someone that's new to it and they start to practice Kundalini Yoga, it needs a lot of preparation. The body and the mind need a lot of preparation. This is why, like myself, I did 10 years of preparation in a way, through doing yoga postures and pranayama, yoga cleansing practices and so on. Because it's a strong force. The Kundalini is like an energy, pranic energy that can be awakened, activated. Because they say it's coiled like a serpent. The symbology of it is like a serpent coiled at the base, and it's lying dormant at the base of the spine. If it's if the body's not prepared to take that energy, it's like putting a few thousand volts of electricity into a light bulb that can only take, say, 30 watts. It's like putting 1,000 watts into it. It just explode. I mean, there have been stories of people. I can't remember now. There was an Indian guy who had months of trouble. I think for years, his body was suffering because this energy had awoken. And sometimes you can go up the wrong channel. In the body, we have these there's a psychic network of nadis, in the astral body, and the energy travels through those. If it goes the wrong way, for example, it may cause havoc in the body, problems with problems with your digestion, illness and fevers, all sorts of things could happen. So
the reason I asked is because you mentioned it in your book.
Yes.
And the first time I was acquainted actually with your book by chance, from in a library, and that's when I became aware of this.
Oh, I see.
Oh, God, okay. All right, thank you.
Yes. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Should we have any more questions?
What advice would you give to somebody that is interested in Kriya Yoga? What should they do in order to start their Kriya Yoga journey?
Right, okay. First of all, if they're completely new to Kriya Yoga, I would say, to get kind of attuned to it, I would say read Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. Because I know this book is very powerful, actually, spiritually powerful. I've met many people who have read this book, and it's changed their lives. It really does change their way of thinking, I think, after reading that book. Yogananda himself said it empowered that book with spiritual vibrations, and I think he wanted as many people to read it as possible so that they would change their consciousness. And I think this would give you a good background or idea about it. Of course, you can read, there's my book, which has got the practical techniques in, this one, Yoga Meditation. There's also another one, this one I've only just brought out. It's called Raja and Kriya, The Supreme Art and Science of Raja and Kriya Yoga. As you can see, it's a big volume which is complete and very comprehensive on the subject of Raja and Kriya Yoga. That's available now to buy in shops. There are also some organizations you can follow it. For example, if you want to go along to their meditations, there's the Self-Realization Fellowship, which Yogananda started, his own organization. He started in America back in the 1920s. Because Yogananda went to America, he stayed there for 30 years, and he was one of the first ones, the pioneers of bringing yoga to the West, actually. There's also another organization called Ananda. All these are in other countries, in America or in Italy. Otherwise, myself, I run a meditation group here in London, South London, where I teach these techniques, the techniques in my book, and also give Kriya initiation. I was ordained by a direct disciple called Roy Eugene Davis back in 2011, who said that I could give Kriya initiation and teach others. Before him, Swami Kriyananda was my teacher for around about 30 years almost. So I've met the two direct disciples, because now there's not many left. Roy Eugene Davis is one of the last ones. He's about 84 years old now. And there's some living in the Self-Realization Fellowship in America, some of the older disciples there. But from all the yogas I practice, I think Kriya Yoga is a powerful path to follow. The teachings are excellent, to take you into a deep meditation, if that's what you would like to do. For initiation into Kriya, you need to prepare for some teachers you may find that come over and give a whirlwind kind of a weekend where they say, I can give you Kriya initiation, it'll cost you £150, but it's a bit overwhelming because they would give you all the techniques in one weekend, and then that will overwhelm you and you won't know what to do next. Whereas I teach it gradually, so it's over a period of time. We start from the first technique is the Hong Saw technique, which I showed you this evening, and then there's some other techniques we do, and then it's up to you. When you feel ready, if you feel drawn to this path or these Yogananda, you feel that he's your guru, then you may want to take Kriya initiation. So it's a gradual process, and the spiritual path is not something instantaneous. That happens very rarely, I think, for some people. It's a gradual process, and one has to be patient and persevere and take your time. Thank you.
Great.
All right.
Thanks
Thanks very much.
So maybe if you've got any